All right. Hello. Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. Happy Thursday to each of you. I hope you're having an awesome week so far. And gosh, here we are again. It's Thursday. Every time we turn around, right, Ishbel? We were just
I
talking about that.
know.
And it's already March. Like, how is that possible?
I
Okay.
don't understand it.
Seriously. I don't either. I do not understand it either. But nonetheless, I'm super happy to be here with you, to our wonderful audience. And I'm really excited to have an opportunity to talk with Ishbel Cavaleri today. Cavallari. Did I say that right?
Cavalieri, yes.
Awesome.
Two
What a
two
great,
complicated names.
I love it. And Ishbel is from Ishbel Well. And really looking forward to our conversation. So, what is our topic today? We are going to be talking about endocrine disruptors. All right. So, really, really a cool topic, one that we on the Live with Leslie show have not delved into yet. So, really looking forward to learning more myself and, of course, sharing Ishbel's knowledge with everyone who joins us today. And, of course, welcome to you, those of you that join us for the recording as well. So, here's the thing, most people don't realize that endocrine disruptors really can dramatically influence hormone health and, really super important, can contribute to chronic health issues. And it's fascinating to me because this is not something that personally I really am accustomed to looking at. So that's why I'm super excited to learn more about this. So we're going to dig in. We're going to learn, talk about how to protect yourself from endocrine disruptors and facilitate programming for your clients around this critical topic. And I want to again welcome you. If you're joining us live, that's great. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know, where you're joining from. And if you are catching us on the replay, give us a comment as well. Let me know where you're from, and we'll say hello. And of course, if you guys have questions, we'll be taking questions throughout. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lesli Bitel. And I'm a practice building expert for health and wellness entrepreneurs who want to attract more clients, sell more programs, and ultimately, of course, grow a profitable practice integrating multiple streams of income. So that's a little bit about me. And I let me just kind of give you a quick overview, like a rundown of some of the topics that we're going to be covering today. So you're going to learn how to identify endocrine disruptors in your daily life. We're going to get a complex list of resources for understanding endocrine disruptors. We'll dive into tips on gut health and detox practices for flushing endocrine disruptors out. I'm really excited about that. And we'll talk a little bit about new products that are highly effective and free of endocrine disruptors. All right. So a lot of great stuff in store for you today. All right. So again, I want to welcome Ishbel. Really, really excited to chat with you. And thank you in advance for sharing, your time with us today and your wisdom. So how about if we kick things off? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your practice, what you've been up to, who your, primary, focus is within your private practice? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And this is a topic that I am really passionate about and have integrated into my nutritional therapy practice. So I'm a functional nutritionist. I'm also a yoga and Pilates therapist, and I'm also a trained esthetician, which will kind
Yeah.
of come into play a little bit today as we're talking about endocrine disruptors. My nutritional therapy practice focuses on helping people who have hormonal imbalances. This could be PMS, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, which is what I have. A lot of men have hormonal imbalances as well, and they oftentimes get ignored. So men can suffer from too much estrogen, for instance. They can have infertility issues and struggle with losing weight just as much
Hmm.
as women can. And even men go through andropause. we don't really talk about that very
Ah,
much as women go
okay.
through menopause. So, in my practice, I take a really holistic approach, viewing hormones through several different lenses, one of which is gut health and detox support, um, as well as, stress, diet, and lifestyle choices. And this endocrine disruptor piece is a huge part of that puzzle. And across the board, I find that people are familiar with hormone imbalances. Most people actually struggle with some level of hormonal imbalance, but most people have never heard of endocrine disruptors, nor do they know what a big part endocrine disruptors have to play in the issues that they're experiencing.
So incredible. All right. So you specialize in helping people with hormonal imbalances, obviously.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, from a patient perspective, how would one know if they have a hormonal imbalance?
So the telltale signs really are, especially for women and women who are still of childbearing age,
Mhm.
PMS has been considered sort of like a normal part of a woman's month,
Yeah.
but it does not have to be. And I think dispelling some of the myths about hormonal imbalances is a really key part of the conversation. So, for women who struggle with PMS, which could be, cramping, severe cramping, a little bit of
Mhm.
cramping is generally normal. Sore
Mhm.
breasts, crankiness. Sometimes a lot of women have pretty severe depression leading up to their period. Um, and then it can be more severe, like endometriosis and polycystic ovary syndrome, which is what I have and what really got me into this field in the first place. But also infertility, reoccurrent miscarriage. And then
Mhm.
for men, sexual dysfunction is a really can be a real issue for men who are struggling with hormonal imbalances. And this happens for men and women, and we're going to kind of be getting into this more today. But the impact that too much estrogen can have both on men and women
Mm.
can show itself in really stubborn weight gain around the abdomen and around the hips. And men can
Mm.
experience this as well. Um, and yeah, so.
Okay. So interesting. All right, so let's go
Mm.
ahead and dig in. What can you define what are endocrine disruptors?
Yeah, great question. So, endocrine disruptors are exogenous chemicals. So, in other words, they're outside of the human body
Mhm.
and they act like hormones. So, when a person comes into contact with an endocrine disruptor, the endocrine system, which is the system that manages hormones in the body,
Mhm.
will perceive that endocrine disruptor as a hormone, which is a problem
Okay.
because and hormone balance is a very delicate, very precise kind of orchestra, if you will. And when an
Mhm.
endocrine disruptor becomes a part of that orchestra, it throws off the whole balance, or if you will, like if we're thinking about a song. If the guitarist is totally out of tune, it throws off the piano player, it throws off the singer,
Right.
etc. So endocrine disruptors can come in in many different forms.
Mhm.
So cooking ware, like
Mm.
different types of gosh, I'm missing the word here, so that your food doesn't stick.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, can have endocrine disruptors in it.
Hmm.
Furniture,
Mm.
clothing, water, food,
Wow, furniture?
and
Okay,
yes,
what is in furniture?
flame retardants.
Oh my god. Hello?
Yeah.
Mattresses?
Mattresses, unfortunately, children are highly
Wow.
exposed to these chemicals because a lot of clothing is marked, with flame retardants in it.
Yeah.
There's a whole history and backstory behind that of how that became a part of our political system, even laws that were
Okay.
brought in around that. It could be a whole
Wow.
other workshop. And actually, the main point of contact for most people with endocrine disruptors are their personal care products. So most
Okay.
people apply up to 20 products to their skin a day,
Mhm.
and the majority of those products have ingredients in them that are endocrine disruptors.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Okay. That's bad.
it is.
That's scary. I mean, especially when
Yeah,
I just think about how prevalent these things are. Um, I just the mattress thing alone, I would
yes,
assume, I don't know for sure if it's directly correlated, but I would assume that some of these things are also considered carcinogens.
that's exactly
I would
right.
assume,
And
right? Yeah.
impact brain development actually quite significantly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yes, yes.
All right.
And
Pretty
this is
intense.
an aspect, it is, of this conversation that I want to give people a little bit of heads up on that initially when you start learning about this, it feels a little overwhelming. And I want to
Mhm.
encourage everyone to just take it step by step. I mean,
Right.
Rome was not built in a day. There are small changes that you can make every single day, and also ways that you can support your liver and your gut to help you, deal with this, and also help to protect and support your family through this as well.
Okay. Yeah, I just got back from the Integrative Health Symposium over the weekend,
Mm,
and
mhm.
um, and interestingly, they had a big display with organic mattresses.
Yes,
So
yes.
I and we have organic mattresses.
Mhm.
So I think I did a little research on that, you know, with one of our moves. But yeah, so all the more reason to consider that going in that direction.
I
But
love
yeah, you can't do it all at
mattress.
once, right? Like you can't just
No,
like, who could, right?
no.
It's just not doable. So so yeah, I love that, one step at a time. So
Absolutely.
how do these endocrine disorders, can you kind of give us a little bit of the physiology or, how they impact hormonal imbalance? A little more
Absolutely.
detail?
Absolutely. So endocrine disruptors is sort of like the umbrella term, if you will. Okay. And then there are different types of endocrine disruptors. So there are obesogens,
Okay.
which was actually discovered by a scientist who was working in Japan, and he was investigating why frogs were developing these different types of mutations and were
Okay.
also having some endocrine issues themselves. And he discovered obesogens, which actually cause fat cells to get bigger, and it's a
Oh,
contributing factor for obesity. And we're going to kind of be touching into how these endocrine disruptors they're finding are a pretty considerable contributing factor to
mhm.
obesity. And certainly we know, especially in the United States, that is a growing issue in our
Oh
country.
my gosh. Yeah.
Estrogens are one type of endocrine disruptor, and there's overlap here. Xenoestrogens are chemicals that behave like estrogen, and this particular kind of endocrine disruptor is really the one that we want to focus on when we're talking about cancer,
Mhm.
and in particular the way that, particularly for women. Uh,
Mhm.
Breast cancer, uterine cancer, ovarian cancer. The research into those kinds of cancers and the relationship with xenoestrogens, the relationship is very strong. And
Mm.
there's even research coming out just in the last month or two on chemical hair straighteners, hair
Oh.
dyes, that kind of thing. And
Mm.
the rate of cancer for women who use those products.
Wow. That's
Um,
frightening.
it is. And what we're also finding is that women of color, especially Black women, are impacted by these chemicals at a much higher rate
Oh,
than white women are.
okay.
So there are a lot of considerations here,
Mhm.
and again, educating yourself about this and also learning that there are alternatives is key.
Okay.
So, um, those are the different kind of kinds of endocrine disruptors. And specifically when we're talking about xenoestrogens, so when a person has too much estrogen in their system, okay, it can cause these different hormone-driven cancers, okay?
Mhm.
And what we simultaneously want to be looking at is how the liver is processing estrogen. So
Okay.
try not to get too much into the weeds here, but when we have
Yeah.
a lot of nutritionists on this call, so it's good to kind of dive into this a little bit.
Right.
So there's three different detox pathways of the liver. There's 2-OH, 4-OH, and 16-OH.
Okay.
4-OH and 16-OH are considered the uh, the worst of the three pathways, to say it the most directly. And those two pathways, 4-OH and 16-OH, are the ones that uh, clinically are showing are leading to these cancers.
Ah.
Okay, so when the liver is detoxing estrogen down those two pathways,
Mhm.
there is a higher incidence of these estrogen driven cancers.
Okay.
The, the 2-OH pathway is considered the healthiest pathway. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when someone had man or woman is producing too much estrogen, and again, these xenoestrogens can behave like estrogen. So they sort of fill up the estrogen bucket, if you will. So you
Okay.
have your own natural production of estrogen, but then you have these xenoestrogens coming from all of these endocrine disrupting chemicals that essentially add to that estrogen bucket.
Mhm.
So now the liver is contending with a lot more estrogen than it is accustomed to and designed to, frankly. Okay.
Mhm.
And this is where we can start to see an overflow into too much estrogen being detoxed down those negative pathways of 4-OH and
Mm.
16-OH. Mhm.
So how do you know? Like what markers are we looking for? Are we looking at
Sure.
genetics here? Are we looking at like estradiol levels? Are we like how do we
Great
know?
question. Yeah. So the genetics piece is an excellent question.
Mhm.
There are different genetic mutations that impact liver function in general. A
Right.
lot of people are familiar at this point with methylation, and that some people
Mhm.
have compromised methylation. And so that can also impact how robust the liver functions.
Okay.
Um, and then I use the Dutch test. I use several different kinds of hormone tests in my practice,
Okay.
but the Dutch test is the one that can show us how estrogen is being detoxed in the liver, and it will give us
Mhm.
a percentage of how much estrogen is being detoxed down those three different pathways. And if we
Mhm.
see, for instance, that, wow, maybe I'm working with a man, right? I mean, this
Mhm.
happens all the time with my male clients who are over 45. I would
Mhm.
I would say that 75% of my male clients over 45 are struggling with this issue, that they are producing too much estrogen, and that it's also impacting testosterone production,
Mhm.
and that estrogen is being detoxed down those less healthy pathways.
Right.
So the question then becomes, why do we have so much estrogen being produced? And
Okay.
question number two is, how do we support the liver so that it can detox down the healthier pathway?
Right.
Mhm. So in that instance, xenoestrogens is a part of that conversation. We need to really look through their life and start to pay attention to, what are you washing your hair with? What kind of deodorant are you using? Are you eating organic food?
Mhm.
What are you brushing your teeth with?
Mm.
Are you around a lot of chemicals? A lot of times people don't even realize that they are. What are you cleaning
Okay.
your house with? So that's one aspect of it. And then there are a lot of other aspects that go into, of course, that estrogen piece. But again, the xenoestrogens are a part of that conversation.
Wow. My
Yeah.
brain is kind of wanting to explode right now, to be honest. Just being honest. All right. So
Totally.
oh, all right. So, okay. So Wow. All right. So where do I take this? I mean, there's like a lot of different directions. All right. So
Mhm.
I am familiar with phase 1 and phase 2 detox. Okay.
Mhm.
And maybe
Mhm.
phase 3 from what I
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm.
Um, but based on what you're saying, we're not looking at those 3 detox pathways. We're looking at different different pathways, I think. So if
So,
someone is a crummy, phase 2, which, we can look at through, genetics, like,
mhm.
various SNPs,
Yep.
like we're not, great at producing glutathione as an example,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Like I am one of those people. I don't,
Mhm.
I have a SNP there.
Mhm.
So can we, like, just by knowing that, can we draw any conclusions about how someone might metabolize estrogen, or is it just completely different?
It is different.
Okay.
Yeah, it really is different, and it can also change.
Oh,
So
okay.
one of the big recommendations that I'll oftentimes make to people who are just experiencing hormonal imbalance symptoms, right? If we just keep it super simple and we don't
Okay.
even think about running a Dutch test, right?
Yep.
Um, Cruciferous vegetables are hugely helpful for
Mhm.
transitioning estrogen down a healthier pathway.
Okay.
And you could, so increasing vegetable intake just across the board is such a powerful step in
Okay.
helping to support the liver. Um, other things that support the liver, like you mentioned, glutathione is huge, or
Okay.
NAC, vitamin Bs. And here again is where that methylation piece comes in. That
Okay.
if you know you struggle with methylation, take a methylated vitamin B. If you don't know, take a methylated vitamin
Yeah,
B. Um,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Right.
Complete protein, right? Complete protein is so important
Okay.
for liver function. So with all of my clients who struggle with hormonal imbalances, I actually don't start with our hormones at all, right? I start
Okay.
with this detox piece, looking at what's going on with their gut, looking at what's going
Right.
on with their liver, right? Like we're looking at those foundational pieces. Because again, if you think about that hormone bucket, and maybe
Yeah.
we've got too much estrogen overflowing, we need to empty the bucket somehow, right? So that's
Okay.
kind of step number one.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and obviously, having worked together, I am familiar, somewhat familiar with your approach in that,
Mhm.
in order to work with you as a practitioner, the first step really is the gut component,
It
right?
absolutely is.
Which is
Yes.
so interesting before you even delve into the hormone piece.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I
And
love
what
that.
I find is that, again, because I work with people who have hormone imbalances, um, someone will come to me not having a lot of gut issues at all, right? They
Mhm.
have regular bowel movements. They're not suffering from constipation or diarrhea at all, right?
Yep.
But nonetheless, I insist that we first run a GI map, which is the test that I use to look at what's going on with our gut. And invariably, what we discover is that things are off. And
Okay.
once we correct those imbalances, about 75% of the time, the hormone issues go away.
Wow.
So I
Okay.
don't have a big turnover rate for people to actually shift into the hormone specific work that I do. Okay. Majority of my practice is actually in that first step of gut function. So that just really speaks to again how important this element of
Mhm.
not only detox but also fundamentally looking at how well you're absorbing the food that you're eating and if you can
Okay.
actually use those nutrients to produce the hormones that you need.
Okay. So, like, for the layperson,
Mhm.
can you tell us a little bit about label reading? Like, how do we know
Yes,
if
great
if
question.
those are if what we're currently using is dangerous?
Such a good question. So one of the really important tools here is the environmental working skin deep database. And what I
Okay.
want to say here is that one of the tools, free tools that I have. You'll have the link for that to share with our audience today. If they go to download my Skincare 101 workshop,
Mhm.
they will then receive a step-by-step guided tutorial of how to use the Environmental Working Group Skin Deep website.
Oh,
Um,
great.
which that website is super helpful because you can enter into that database the name of a product that you're using, and it will give you a rating on that product. So, say you're using Colgate, it will
Hmm.
it'll give you a reading on that. And generally, what I recommend is that you want to stay at a rating of 3 or better. Okay.
Okay.
There are a lot of nuances to using that website. And so I go into all of those nuances on that tutorial.
Oh, amazing.
Um, Other ingredients to really keep an eye out for, there are a couple of telltale ones. So parabens
Okay.
are getting their day here. So a lot of people are becoming much more aware of parabens,
Mhm.
and some of the even big personal care product companies are starting to advertise that they no longer use parabens in their
Okay.
products. Um, However, uh, that is a slippery slope,
Okay.
and I get into this a bit in that Skincare 101 workshop in regards to the politics and the laws that regulate these ingredients. It actually makes it incredibly difficult for consumers to know how to protect themselves. So, parabens can be listed a number of different ways, but it always usually starts with paraben something.
Okay.
Um, the other ingredient that is oftentimes a surprise to people is fragrance. So,
Oh.
fragrance, if it's listed on a label, it should
Mhm.
always, after fragrance in parentheses, say like flower essence or almond oil, or that's not a good example, like orange essence. It should
Okay.
tell you what the fragrance is.
Okay.
If it just says fragrance and nothing else, fragrance is a major loophole. So
Oh.
there are over 100 different ingredients. I believe it's over 100 different ingredients that fall under that fragrance headline.
Okay.
This is a way for companies to hide the ingredients that they're using. And a
Mm.
lot of those ingredients can be endocrine disruptors. Again, a lot of those ingredients can confuse the hormone balance, add
Mm.
to that estrogen bucket.
Okay. A lot of fragrance out there,
A lot of fragrance.
like hair products, hairspray. Like, have you ever heard of a hairspray that doesn't have fragrance? I don't think I have.
No, no,
Um,
it's really
even
tricky.
products that are organic.
Hmm.
I don't know if there's any laws around that, but I just like I'd be curious to look because I have an organic lavender scented, and I don't really like
Hmm.
scents. Like if I can get
Yeah.
things without, I prefer it.
Yes.
I just don't like it.
Hmm.
But it does make me wonder. I'll have to go look at my ingredients after
And you
this. My
bring
guess
up a
is probably
really,
not
yeah,
good.
yeah, you bring up a really good point because the marketing aspect of this is a really important part of this conversation. The
Mhm.
pictures that companies use that look all natural, the words that they use, organic and
Right.
all natural and, et cetera, et cetera. None of that is regulated. So they can
Wow.
say whatever they want.
Wow.
And it's only until you look at the ingredients that you can even remotely start to educate yourself about what's actually in that product. But there again, that'll only get you so far
Right.
because, again, of this fragrance loophole, and there are a lot of other loopholes and confusing pieces of this, which is why I really recommend that Environmental Working Group Skin Deep database.
Okay. Let me take a look at let me post that. Oh, and I actually just saw that we have some questions. Tell me
Mhm.
the website again. I'll post that.
For the Environmental
Uh-huh.
Working Group,
Yeah, is
let
that what
me,
it is?
yes, it's an Environmental Working Group. Skin Deep.
Okay, so environmentalworkinggroup.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
All
I
right.
think, well, I'm sorry, Leslie, let me
Yeah, it's
think
okay.
about it. I think it's actually the EWG,
Okay.
ewg.com. Is that
Okay,
right?
that's way easier. I hope so.
Oh,
EWG. I'll
sorry.
bet it is. I'll bet it is.
Let me see.
Um, dot,
ewg.org.
okay. .org. Okay,
There we
right.
go.
All right, beautiful. That's way easier to type. So
Mm-hmm.
ewg.org. I'll take a look at that myself. Okay, guys, let's jump into some of these questions. I think we have some great ones. Okay, Dr. Stephen Finch, what about ED's release from adipose tissue during weight loss? Any thoughts? Oh, great
Exactly.
question.
Yeah, that's such an important question. And
Mhm.
so, one of the programs in my business is a detox program.
Mhm.
And first off, I won't accept anyone into that program who struggles with constipation. So, that's
Oh,
requirement number one.
okay. Why is that?
Um, because to Dr. Finch's point here,
Yeah.
when people start losing weight, that is where these chemicals tend to hang out. Okay, so
Okay.
the body in its infinite wisdom helps to store those toxins away to
Okay.
protect the body. So when people start to lose weight, and a lot of nutritionists run into this, right? Those toxins start to get released into the bloodstream, and if that detox funnel, if you will, is not really working properly, those toxins can hang out too long in the system and get reabsorbed. And so if you're struggling with constipation and simultaneously your body is trying to get rid of these toxins, it can make people feel really horrible.
Mm,
So that's why you gotta have daily bowel movements and not feel like you have to force it in order to be able to really enter into to detox.
okay. Great question. Okay, let me dig into some of the other ones. Okay. Okay, so this question is I missed what are the products that are endocrine disruptors?
So, unfortunately, it could
A lot.
be
Yeah.
anything. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But the big takeaway here is that personal care products are usually the most common way that people come into contact with endocrine
Okay.
disruptors.
So if we had
Mhm.
to prioritize, right?
Exactly.
Because again, we
That's
can't do
where
it
I would
all
start.
overnight. Okay, so you would start with personal care. Okay.
Yep, yep.
And I don't know.
And
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, no, go ahead, Leslie. I don't wanna
Oh, I was just
interrupt.
gonna say, like this could be right or wrong. I'm not sure, but I just go, okay, what do I use on the largest surface area of my body? Maybe I
Mhm,
would start there, like body lotion, because it
mhm,
just like you put it everywhere, right? Like kind of head to
mhm.
toe almost.
Yes,
Um, but I don't know if that's the right way to look at it.
really good question. So, um, I'll try not to get too far off into the weeds here.
Okay.
Try to walk the line here. So, um, that is a good consideration, and
Okay.
simultaneously, the ingredients, I would say, are more important.
Okay.
So, we talked about parabens, we talked about fragrance, and retinol. I love talking about retinol because
Oh,
so many women, in their 40s, 50s, and
right.
beyond use retinol. If you look up retinol on the Environmental Working Group website, it's at a 9 out of 10 on the toxicity scale.
You're
Uh,
kidding.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
and you know what? Okay, so just a little tidbit. I usually don't use retinol like ever. And I
Hmm.
was just in NYC over the weekend and I got
Hmm.
lured into Blue Mercury, right?
Hmm.
I think that's what
Love
it's
that.
called.
Okay.
And I went right to the organic section. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make some changes here. And
Hmm.
I purchased some organic retinol product.
Sure.
So
Sure.
so there we go. I think I succumbed to probably some great marketing.
And part of, one of my streams of income is beauty counter. So
Yeah.
I sell beauty counter products. And
Yep.
the reason that I went with them in the first place is because they're just incredible. And their heart is in such an amazing place. And they
Okay.
are very, very responsible for working in conjunction with
Mm,
Congress for passing the number of laws that have been passed in the last several years to protect
okay.
consumers from these ingredients. So Beauty Counter actually has a anti-aging product that has something called Retinatural in it that has
Oh,
been shown. One of the ingredients is bakuchiol, and that
okay.
has been shown to work just as well as retinol. So I
Wow.
bring this up to say that a lot, and it's understandable, people start thinking like, God, if I have to give up my retinol, like what's going to happen to my face, right? And
Uh-huh.
so there are so many other products actually
Okay.
that work just as well, but don't pose the health risks.
That is so good to know. Okay. Um, okay, let me go to some other comments. So basically, I mean, there's just countless places where we would find endocrine disruptors. But the first
Hmm.
place that you would recommend is our personal care products, including
That is
hair.
correct.
Including
Yes,
hair. Okay. All
yes,
right.
yes. And thinking, back to your point, toothpaste is already in your mouth,
Okay.
right?
I'd
So,
never think of toothpaste.
and like deodorant is a pretty big ticket item.
I think about
But it,
deodorant, but I don't
yeah,
even know, like, like do the natural deodorants, do they contain these? Because now there's a lot of confusion, right?
there is. And like there's one deodorant company that has great ingredients until we get to fragrance. So it's like a
Uh,
baking soda,
okay.
cornstarch, like pretty basic
Yeah,
deodorant, but then the fragrance is in there. And for me, that cuts it out.
that's a
So
deal
yeah,
breaker.
that's a deal breaker. Hmm.
Okay. Super interesting. Okay, this is a great question. Can these endocrine disruptors impact sleep? I would imagine
So
so,
that's
but
a
I don't.
really interesting
Yeah, I don't
question.
know what
Yeah.
that physiology would be exactly, or that mechanism of action.
Yeah. So, this is where we really have to look at the hormone cascade. And, as we were talking about earlier, really getting into the weeds, if you will, about how these hormones interact together. And one of the things that I find most commonly in my practice is that people who are struggling with dysregulated blood sugar are oftentimes experiencing issues with their sleep. Bear in mind that
Ah,
one of the things that the liver is such an incredible organ, right? I mean, it's just does
truly.
a lot of stuff. But one of the things that it does is helps to balance blood sugar, right? And make
Mhm.
sure that you have the macronutrients that you need when you need them. And so anything that burdens the liver, alcohol included, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of research that shows how alcohol impacts estrogen, for
Mm.
instance,
Mhm.
and kind of delays the detoxification of estrogen. So anything that we are doing in our day to day lives that's impacting the liver, you know, if we take that one step further and we start talking about what does the liver do in the body, it impacts blood sugar regulation. And I find that blood sugar is one of those things that can wake people up at 3 in the morning. There are a lot of other things that wake people up at 3 in the morning, don't get me wrong, but
Okay.
yeah, we could go down the rabbit hole with that.
That could be a whole nother life.
That could be a whole other thing.
That's a big problem that
Yeah,
people
it
have.
really is.
Okay, so one more question. What is the name of the test to evaluate gut health?
I use the GI map.
Yeah.
And one point that I wanted to bring up about that is that one of the markers on the GI map is for beta glucuronidase, and that is a marker for looking at how well the gut is metabolizing detoxing estrogen. And
Oh,
so a lot of times when I run a GI map on a client, and again, as we talked about, that's the first step that I take is that gut test, and then I move on to hormone tests if needed. If I see that beta glucuronidase number high, right, then already we are going to be looking at estrogen
Okay.
dominance type issues and looking at, how can we help to reduce, not reduce, but how can we help to support the body's detox of estrogen specifically?
Okay. Is the Dutch test blood?
The Dutch test is urine.
Oh, okay. That's super
Hmm.
interesting. All right.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then someone is saying, yes, I would love another in-depth on sleep. So we'll have to talk about that, Ishbel. Okay.
That'd be great.
Amazing. Okay. So I noticed you have nail polish on.
Yes,
So
exactly, right? I
so tell
love my
me,
nail polish.
all right, tell me what you use
Yep.
because I actually, probably TMI, I know,
Hmm.
but I have like that is one thing because I know there's formaldehyde and terrible chemicals. And so,
Yep.
but I just couldn't resist. So, so
Yes, and
anyway,
I love that you asked that
uh-huh.
because again, when people start hearing about this, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna just have to go like, you know, I'm only
Yeah.
gonna use
Like I'm
water
gonna have
from
gray
here on out."
hair and I'm gonna,
Exactly.
like
And but again,
look
I
like
just want to
hell.
totally. I just want to encourage you that it does not have to roll that way at all. So
Thank
I
God.
love my nail polish and I use Dazzle Dry. The
Okay.
name is hilarious
Dazzle
and
dry.
the ingredients are good and it works incredibly well.
Okay.
Like it works like a gel nail polish, so it doesn't chip or anything for like 7 days.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
Okay. Dazzle
I do it
dry.
myself at home. Yeah.
Dazzle dry nail system. Okay.
Hmm.
Dry performance. Okay. Super exciting. So I think, can you get this on Amazon? It
I
looks like it,
don't know,
maybe. Okay.
actually. Maybe you can.
Um, you can get everything on Amazon, right? Okay.
Hmm.
Super, super cool. All right. All right. Yeah. Cause I've been trying to avoid that. And anyway, great little tip there.
Yeah. And one other tip for people who are interested in just like learning more about this, HBO did like a 4-part documentary series on this topic
Oh,
called
okay.
Not So Pretty. And they have an entire episode on nail polish and also
Ooh,
like the nail industry
okay.
and people who work in nail
Can't
salons.
be good.
Right. And I loved the perspective that they took on this of, figuring out how to support these people and still take care of their health and take care of
Right.
our health. So like you could bring your Dazzle Dry in to a nail salon and they could use that product instead of the
Sure.
one that they're using. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do that anyway because
Yeah.
a lot of times, well, anyway, a lot of times theirs is like really old and like lasts
Hmm.
like 5 minutes before it's chipping. Right.
Yes,
But anyway, I love that
totally.
idea. So you could stock up and just bring your own.
Yeah.
It's like, all right. Awesome. Okay. So let's see here. So I want to make sure that we're covering everything. Okay. So we did talk about how we can protect ourselves from endocrine disruptors and they're
Hmm.
just so everywhere that we do have to prioritize,
That's right.
obviously. So once we, try to make some changes around our own self-care kind of
Hmm.
products,
Hmm.
I would assume we would maybe then look at like what are the products we're using in our homes, and
Yes.
I'll bet those.
Non-stick
Yeah.
cookware,
Okay.
that
Okay.
I was
That's a
missing
big
that
one.
word. Teflon. If
Teflon.
you cook with
Okay.
Teflon, please
Get rid of
stop
it. Okay.
immediately.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yep. I've done that. Quit that. But I need to go back to my skincare and all that,
Hmm.
and hair. All
Hair.
right. got
Yeah.
some work to do yet.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I would just imagine that those mattresses, I would think that's because, just considering the number of hours you're asleep, I would imagine
Exactly.
that is like a pretty significant
Yes.
source of toxins as well. But
Yeah.
not cheap to make the switch. I will, I can definitely vouch for that.
Hmm.
But all things
Yeah.
considered, definitely worth it. Okay, so can you just talk a little bit about how you create programming for your clients on endocrine disruptors?
Sure. So for, I have my own kind of running list of what's important to me when with
Okay.
every client that I work with, and education is at the top of that list. I'm
Okay.
really, really passionate about education. I find that when people know better, they do better.
Okay.
And when they have the support and the tools to make those changes, they do it. And so the bottom line here is that most people just don't know that endocrine disruptors
You
are an
don't.
issue in the first place.
Mhm.
And there's a doctor named Laura Shaheen, and
Mhm.
she is actually a fertility specialist, and she is very much in the mix with this endocrine disruptor piece. And she calls endocrine disruptors the tobacco of our generation.
Ah.
So I see that this issue is going to become more and more part of kind of the conversation, as it should be. And when
Mhm.
I talk with my clients, they're oftentimes just like, what are you talking about? Like, my lotion is making me sick.
Or
So,
like my lotion is making me gain weight,
right,
right?
right,
Like how
right.
can that be?
Yeah. So I really go into those conversations well equipped with all of the research. And again, that skincare 101 workshop is a nice place to start. But
Mhm.
I have a clean beauty endocrine system workshop that I teach probably every
Mm.
quarter.
Okay.
That workshop is just jam packed of all of the research that I've done over the years. So that workshop, I invite anybody, in your audience who wants to come to that workshop. You can grab that skincare 101
Oh,
and
yeah.
you'll find out about it.
Okay.
Um, all of my clients have access to that workshop, and I just really encourage all my clients to watch that so that
Is this the
I
Oh,
go
sorry, I
ahead.
didn't mean to
Mm-mm.
interrupt.
No, no, no.
Is this the link that you shared with me?
So that link will take people to the skincare 101 workshop. So
Okay.
that's kind of like the first like overview. Okay,
Okay.
I will tell you that that's not going to go super in depth, like the
Okay.
clean beauty endocrine system workshop will. But once you
Okay.
get the skincare 101 workshop, you'll receive an email from me, and every month, last Thursday of every month at 6:30, I do a an event, like a spa event. So
Okay.
in that spa event, we do all the fun like spa stuff. We
Yay.
do face yoga, we do like
Ooh.
gua sha, but then I also choose a topic to really dive into deep on. So like
Okay.
the end of March will be makeup. So we're going to talk
Oh,
about
good.
all of the considerations with makeup, and then I'll also do a makeup tutorial. So this is where like my past life of being an esthetician and doing people's makeup when I
Yeah.
was in my early 20s, like somehow has collided with
Somehow it's
endocrine
perfectly
disruptors.
married to your
Exactly.
scientific brain now. Like, who would have
Exactly.
ever thought? That is so cool.
Seriously, it's so funny. But, as we all know as nutritionists and, people who support other people in making significant changes, you can't just take makeup away. You have to teach people what to look for and exchange it out.
Exactly. Yeah. We're not quitting makeup, right?
No,
Not happening. All right.
not for me anyways.
Just real quick as we wrap up, do you have any thoughts on carpet and flooring? I would assume it's probably
Oh,
the same.
yeah. So he- here's what I'll say about this. I will say
Okay.
I really struggle with these ones. I really struggle with this. Buying First off, I just don't get carpeting in my house at all
Yeah.
anymore
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons, even aside from endocrine disruptors.
Same.
Um, I have found that the cost is more than I can handle. And in terms of, like getting organic wool carpeting.
Right.
Um, and that also like vinyl flooring can have endocrine disruptors in it.
Yeah.
And I have some of that in my house. I'm not
Yeah.
going to tear it out.
Right. Yeah.
So this is where it comes down to me making choices about my highest exposure, number one, but then number two, making sure that I'm equipping my liver and my gut with everything that it needs to get rid of this stuff. And some of it we don't get rid of, we live with
Right.
it. Okay, so
Right.
that's a whole other conversation. But really looking at this from a holistic perspective of what can I do on a daily basis to help support my detox, like exercise, working up a sweat, like all of
Okay.
that. We live with these chemicals, just no way around it,
Yeah.
right? But we need to limit our exposure and support our detox.
Okay. I love it. All right. So, as we start to wrap up, any final words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience today?
So one last piece that I want to bring into this conversation is that these chemicals have a huge impact on us personally, on our families, right? On the
Mhm.
people that we love. But they are also having a huge impact on our planet and our oceans, and other animals are being impacted by these chemicals as well. The
Mm,
United States is far, far, far behind the European Union in regulating these chemicals. And so, one of my goals in talking about this subject is again to educate people and spread awareness, because the louder our voices get, the more likely it is that laws will be enacted to help change the trajectory of this. And that has actually
right.
already happened. In January, the Congress passed the first law since the 1930s to regulate the ingredients in personal care products. So it is happening. And again, the more people are educated about this, the more we can bring these changes to pass.
Amazing. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Ishbel. This has
My
been
pleasure.
absolutely jam-packed with pearls. Really
So
great
glad.
ones too. Yeah, I
So
loved it.
glad.
So, we'll have to chat about, doing another topic maybe on sleep, if that's something that you'd like to chat with our audience about.
That
All
would be
right,
great.
guys. So,
Okay.
thank you so much for joining us. I hope you got just a ton of value today. I know I certainly did. And I will look forward to seeing you all next week. All right. Bye bye for now. Take care.